I think what the main failure is Western countries and liberal democracies don't understand the Soviet mindset, the Soviet thinking, which is 100 years ahead. They're willing to get through millions of Russians until they take this country, until they take the rest of Europe. And we're thinking in a tiny short-term strategy that we can just temporarily hold peace just to see how it goes. And I think that's the sort of the main difference between what's going on here. And so, yeah, putting British troops on the ground, we have a government that changes every 4 years. Probably the next government promises, because of Russian propaganda, would say that we'll take our troops home and we'll just let everything go. But every single time that the West has had any kind of peace promises with Russia, it's ended in chaos. In 2009, Hillary Clinton stood with Sergei Lavrov and she had a big red button and she said, we're going to hit this button and we're going to reset our relationship with Russia. We're going to forget about the bad days of the Cold War. We're going to forget about all of that horrible stuff and we're going to renew our relationship with peace. Well, look what happened next. We had the invasion of Crimea. We had the Donetsk People's Republic set up and the disruption that happened there. And we had Russia wage a hybrid war all across the rest of Europe. And so every single time there's any mention of peacekeeping or guarantees in this country, Ukraine has been betrayed by the West every time. Even in 1994, this country had the third largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, and they gave it up. And I visited the museum and I saw those silos where those nuclear weapons are now gathering dust. And Ukraine promised to give it up for peace, for these sanctions. And look what happened now. The only security guarantees right now is the West realizing that the only way that Ukraine can survive is if Russia is destroyed economically. Russia will not stop doing what it's doing until it can't afford to do it anymore. And the West has the power to do that. The West can do more sanctions, and the West can also sanction India, which trades all of its oil. If Russia can't afford to pay soldiers to kill Ukrainians, this would stop in days. That's the only way to stop Russia. Anything else is genuinely just a delay tactic to allow Russia to rearm. And I think that's possible. I'm extremely hopeful for Ukraine. I think this country will survive, and it has for so long, and it will be a success story. But only when Russia is economically destroyed. There is nothing that will stop the imperialist, colonialist ambitions of the Soviet mindset.
They don't give a damn about people. Why? The soldiers, I mean. And the people of Russia as well.
I mean, a lot of people from the UK and from the West say that once Putin's gone, all this will stop. And I don't think that's true. Because from the lower to the upper class of Russian society, there's a fundamental indifference to human life. And it's actually quite a racist and fascist mindset. And it's that if you're not from the motherland of Russia, your life doesn't matter. You're a state to be colonized. You're a person to be ridiculed and subjugated. And that exists throughout every single corner of the Soviet mindset. And the only way that's dealt with is if it's isolated. These people will always exist, Russia will always exist, but it should be isolated from the rest of the world. Unable to arm itself, unable to afford a war, and unable to travel, unable to do holidays in Europe, unable to do anything. That's the only way that that mindset is done, is contained. The idea that we shouldn't poke the bear, that the Russian army is something to be feared as this huge, terrifying force on earth, comes from the Cold War days, and it's an outdated ideology, it's an outdated mindset. Russia is a fraction of what it was when it was the Soviet Union back in the Cold War days. After its collapse, Russia's quite a new country as well. Russia was started, in the 1990s. It's a new country with a failing economy, with an economy smaller than Italy's. And I think if you want to understand what the Russian army is as well, you have to understand that Ukraine took and held Russian territory in Kursk for 8 months. And Russia couldn't take back their own land without bringing in troops from North Korea and weapons from Iran and electronics from China. They couldn't take back their own land without that. And it shows how much of a point of weakness they're coming from. And I know at the start of this conversation as well, I said, it doesn't mean that they're completely weak. There's still millions of 18-year-olds that graduate every single year, that turn 18 every single year, that can be drafted in Russia. But when it comes to actual logistics on the front line, these people are soldiers that were pulled out of mental asylums and prisons. These people are criminals that have been pardoned for fighting on the front line. And the main difference that I found between interviewing Ukrainian soldiers and seeing what I saw in Russia is one side knows what they're fighting for, their land, their country, and their people. The other side just wants a paycheck. They don't know what they're fighting for. They have no idea why they're in the Donbass. They have no idea why they've been told to kill Ukrainians. And that's the main difference in mentality that I've seen. One side has no idea what they're doing. And they're disorganized and a mess because their country is a mess. And I think things like Kursk showed that. And videos, now that we can get FPV videos showing that, I mean, we can see videos of Russian soldiers killing their own commanders. I did a video about Russians resorting to cannibalism on the front line. This isn't something we've seen in Europe since the siege of Stalingrad.